As we now approach 1 year since the deadly Hill Country floods, Texas is rolling out new flood warning sirens in the hardest hit areas. But a CBS Texas I-Team investigation found big gaps still exist, leaving many communities without any kind of warning system at all. So tonight, investigative reporter Brian New examining whether lawmakers have fixed the problem or just responded to a crisis.
Sit along the banks of the Guadalupe River, and it sounds peaceful. Flowing water, summer breeze, the quiet of the hill country. But last year, as deadly floodwaters rushed downstream, there was one sound missing.
It was obvious that if sirens had gone off down the upper Guadalupe rivershed as this wall of water was coming down, then people could have had a last-minute warning to get to higher ground. Senate Bill 3 requires the Texas Water Development Board.
In the days after the July 4th flood, State Senator Paul Betancourt pushed to install outdoor warning sirens in flood-prone areas. Lawmakers moved quickly, approving a $50 million plan. And now those sirens are starting to go up.
This will be the last siren, maybe the one that gets people out of the way. And that's a legislation worth writing and fighting to pass and making sure that it got there on time.
How high did the water get here?
About 27 feet in under 27 minutes.
In the early morning hours of July 4th, Randy Murphy woke up to danger. He moved quickly through his ranch, making sure everyone got to higher ground.
We were very blessed. We didn't have any deaths, but it was there were people that were not as fortunate.
Do you think sirens would have made a difference?
No, because you wouldn't have been able to hear them in that kind of a storm.
Murphy says he believes lawmakers, in a rush to act, oversimplified a complex problem.
They really didn't understand what they were saying. They didn't have the background, and they still don't. But here we are.
What's needed, he argues, is something far more sophisticated. A connected network of sensors feeding real-time data capable of pushing targeted alerts to cell phones, radios, and yes, sirens. But our investigation found in many parts of Texas, communities don't even have that one line of defense. Across the state, there is no standard for warning sirens, no state database. Instead, we found systems that are outdated, broken, or missing entirely.
But tomorrow, this siren may mean the real thing.
In some towns like Valley View, sirens date back to the 1950s. And when they're needed the most, these sirens don't always work.
I mean, there was nobody prepared. Nobody had a clue.
In 2024, as a tornado headed towards town, a volunteer firefighter rushed to unlock the gate to sound the alarm. But the siren never made a sound. The city later discovered it had a faulty wire.
We probably have just less than a dozen.
In other places like Fannin County, there's not enough sirens. Just 12 sirens covered nearly 900 square miles, an area that's bigger than Houston.
So what's preventing the county from putting up a dozen more?
Budgetary restrictions, budgetary constraints.
We contacted all 254 counties and identified more than 2,000 sirens statewide. But that still leaves large parts of Texas out of reach of any warning. In the new state funding, it only applies to Hill Country counties hit by last year's floods.
We have a patchwork of sirens out there.
Betancourt says lawmakers had to start somewhere, but warns communities shouldn't wait for the state.
We don't need to go through another natural disaster for everybody to realize that we need to get our outdoor warning sirens up and running, use our local monies wisely, use these state funds, and let's get the job done.
Back along the Guadalupe, a new siren now stands roughly a mile from Randy Murphy's ranch. Last month, it was tested, but Murphy says he never heard it.
If they said sirens are going to be it, we're no further along today than we were back on July 4th.
So far, 8 sirens have been installed as a part of this $50 million effort to expand siren coverage here in the Hill Country. These sirens were placed along the south and north fork of the Guadalupe River, strategically placed on campsites to make sure that the people there will hear them. Up next are these 29 counties here in the Hill Country. They have signed agreements with the state and are in the process of identifying the best location for these sirens. With the I-Team, Brian New, CBS News, Texas.
Saturday marks 1 year since deadly floods hit the Texas Hill Country. More than 130 people died, including 27 campers and counselors at Camp Mystic. Our Jason Allen sits down with 2 parents working to make camp safer nationwide.
We all began to be driven by understanding the truth. What happened that night? What happened leading up to that night? What happened following that night?
That night now connects Matthew Childress and Ryan DeWitt forever. Their daughters, Molly DeWitt and counselor Chloe Childress, were in the same cabin. 2 of the 27 girls who were killed.
If we sat back and did nothing, and this happened again, for another father, another mother, we would be reliving the pain with them.
In a way, you almost feel like you're letting your own daughters down.
Correct.
Correct. At that time, even though I knew it was irrational, I felt that if I could put that timeline together, that I could save my daughter, that I could save these girls.
They were relieved when a state report last month concluded the camp did not prepare for the storm or have a plan to evacuate.
I could physically feel the weight on our shoulders being lifted, that truth was being told to the public.
Make no mistake about it, it doesn't mean that the road ahead is not still really, really difficult for us. To be able to be at the leading edge of meaningful change, that keeps our daughters' purpose and their spirit alive.
That purpose has changed camp safety laws in 3 states already, leading to a nationwide push from the Heaven's 27 families.
This is strangely unique that we have had this new group of folks to lean on, and the good and the bad, and it really truly helps us all to be able to get through.
When I'm in a social setting, I would almost always rather be with Matthew or with any of the other dads.
A couple of nights ago, my wife asked me, how do I think this is all gonna end? I just paused and said, I hope this never ends. This job of safety is never done. So my hopes is that what we've started will continue not only with our group, but with a larger group nationally over time.
This week, those families announced the kickoff of the Safe Summers Foundation, and part of it includes getting 27,000 families to take a pledge to ask camps questions about kids' safety before they go off to camp. It also aims to raise funds to help nonprofit camps make some of those safety changes and also advocate for new safety laws. Jason Allen, CBS News, Kerr County, Texas.
Well, a year after the Hill Country floods, the rebuilding is still slow and expensive. Last July's disaster caused more than $18 billion in damage.
Yeah, but many of the people in the places that were hit the hardest are rebuilding without flood insurance. I-Team reporter Brian New explains why flood insurance has become so rare in Texas and why more people are dropping it.
You've heard the saying, the show must go on. But at the Hill Country Arts Foundation, that's easier said
The walls are falling down
than done.
I mean, sheetrock was already ripped out, doors were gone, this wall was falling over.
For nearly 70 years, this has been the creative hub for the Hill Country community. Board member Jerry Magnell says they're determined to rebuild, but it won't be easy.
Did you all have flood insurance?
So we did not have private flood insurance on our property. Again, the water had never come this high. We've never seen anything like it.
Statewide, only about 7% of Texas homes have flood insurance. In Kerr County, the number's even lower, about 2%. Flood insurance is not just rare, it's been disappearing.
We need a national flood insurance program that looks like somebody designed it on purpose, because the one we have right now is not.
Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy says the drop can be traced in part to a major FEMA change. In 2021, under the Biden administration, FEMA changed how it prices flood insurance. The goal was to make premiums more accurately reflect the true flood risk of each property.
We believe when it's based on risk and the individual property characteristics, that we do have a methodology that is more equitable and fair.
But as rates rose for many policyholders, the number of people buying flood insurance went down. Nationwide, policies dropped from about 5 million in 2021 to about 4.5 million in 2025. In Texas alone, more than 45,000 flood policies were canceled in just the past year.
This is just an excuse to raise premiums, and they don't care.
Kennedy is now calling on FEMA to go back to its old system.
I think that those members of Congress are being incredibly short-sighted, and I think it's dangerous.
Policy expert Zoe Middleton says going back to the old system will not solve the real problem. She says how FEMA calculates risk is not the issue. The issue is that too many people can no longer afford the coverage.
So what Congress can do and what they should do is to mandate affordability for people that we know are going to be struggling to cover their own bills for recovery, right? So it's people on fixed incomes, it's folks with disabilities, elderly folks, low and moderate income families. That is essential to making sure not only that individuals recover, but that entire communities are able to recover.
Back in the Hill Country, that affordability question is real. Without insurance, the Arts Foundation is relying on donations and on a community still trying to rebuild itself.
Our comeback story is 100% part of our community's comeback story, and I think it'll be beautiful.
Now, earlier this year, President Trump set up a review panel to take a hard look at FEMA, how it was spending money, how it was operating. Last month, that panel put out this report. On the issue of flood insurance, the panel says the current system should stay, but changes are needed, as the program is, quote, financially unsustainable. One of the proposed changes is to let private insurers take over many of the policies from the federal government. With the I-Team, Brian New, CBS News, Texas.
1 year since the deadly flash flooding swept through that area. This week, CBS Texas is honored to bring all of you stories of healing, stories of getting back to whatever their new normal is. Our Bo Evans begins our journey for us tonight with a couple who lost their home in the flood, but now, a year later, they finally have a new place to call home once again.
My great-grandfather had settled on this hill. This property has been in my family for 100 years, and my great aunt and great uncle had built this house along with my grandfather.
For Mike Trollinger, there's nothing more familiar than the banks of the Guadalupe River.
I learned to swim in that river. My kids had learned to swim in that river.
And it's along this river where Mike, a San Antonio police officer, built a life. First, with the house he restored piece by piece.
Did all the trim and hung in the doors and just did that on weekends coming in from work in San Antonio, and just did the flooring and everything in a couple weekends. And I put in a lot of blood, sweat, and equity in this house.
Then with Brenda, who would become his wife.
I was a dispatcher and he was a narcotics police officer.
I had the house, and just she comes along and helps make it a home.
A dream retirement in a dream home. But faster than a rushing river, that dream became a nightmare.
So that night, it started raining about 11 o'clock on the 3rd, and then about 4:45 a.m., a good friend and neighbor that lives up the top of the hill, she had called me and woke me up and said, "You awake?" And I could hear the tone of her voice, and I said, "I am now."
And I just remember, being scared, not understanding what was happening. And he said, "We just have to get out of here."
We went out the back door, opened the back door, and a wall of water up to our waist had hit us, and we just held on to each other.
It was scary, and he just kept telling me to hold on.
They waded through waist-deep water and made it up the hill to where Mike's dad lived.
And then within 10 minutes, we watched the whole house get enveloped in water from the river just rushing down.
Just like that, their dream was swept away. But the former San Antonio officer didn't stop. Once he knew Brenda was safe, he went back to help. he found a woman stranded on her roof, her 95-year-old mother still inside her bed.
She, was paralyzed and she had floated, and my husband went over there and broke the window, and with the help of somebody else, they got her out, and he saved her life.
I was in law enforcement for 37 years, and as those that are in the law enforcement or first responders or firemen, you don't think of yourself, you think of your neighbors, and you put them first. I got her safe, I knew she was fine, and then you just kind of go into that mode of, well, who needs help?
But who helps the helpers, like Mike and Brenda, when the water recedes?
I just remember coming down here and just seeing the devastation. Just seeing our stuff everywhere. The next day, me and Mike standing out there looking at everything going, what do we do? Where do we start?
That's where Community Foundation of Texas Hill Country stepped in.
The donor dollars that that have come into the Kerr County Flood Relief Fund are rebuilding homes, not houses.
8 months after the flood, Mike and Brenda's nightmare turned into something they never expected. A $200,000 remodel of Mike's family home, complete at no cost.
If it wasn't for that, I mean, I could have done it, but I would have been in debt for the rest of my life. It's nice actually coming home now and put your feet down and going, we're home.
We're home.
In Hunt, Bo Evans, CBS News, Texas.
This weekend will mark 1 year since the deadly 4th of July flooding that hit the Texas Hill Country. Our media partners at Texas Monthly, they have shared stories of survival and of personal journeys toward healing in a new podcast called Where the River Took Us. Aaron Parsley worked on this project for months. He and his family were in their home along the Guadalupe River when the rushing floodwaters swept them away last year. His young nephew died, unfortunately. Parsley first shared his story with Texas Monthly in his Pulitzer Prize-winning article, and now he's exploring what comes next for himself, for his family, and for the community in this 7-episode podcast. So joining us for tonight's discussion to talk a little bit more about this is Aaron. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. Surviving the flood itself, that's a traumatic event. We know that. But the aftermath also comes with its own challenges, as many can imagine. What helped guide you or motivate you to work on this project while you had to grapple with your own experience?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I think grappling with my own experience was part of the motivation for wanting to do this project. As you mentioned, I wrote about the experience on the 4th of July that my family had out there along the Guadalupe, just days after the flood. In the weeks and months to come after that, the flood was still in my mind. It was still very present in my life and in the life of my family and many other families in Texas. So for me, it just felt like the story was ongoing, and I was trying to sort through the emotions, the big feelings, addressing the trauma and how to be present for my sister and my family. So all of that just became part of this project, and thankfully I was at Texas Monthly, where there's a great team, a careful team who helped me explore some of these thoughts and some of these ideas and how to handle that kind of storytelling.
Aaron, in the first episode of the podcast, you and your family, they share what you all were seeing, hearing, feeling. I can't even imagine that. But all of that experience as the flood waters, they rose around the family's home. At one point, we learned that the building gets swept away and then it splits apart. You kind of described that. What can you tell us about the moment that you realized that you found yourself really caught up in all of the water? And I know it's traumatizing, so forgive me for asking, but take us back to that moment. What was that like?
Yeah, I think that's still a startling moment. I think if I lost consciousness or blacked out at all that day, it was in the moments between when the house came off its foundation and I found myself suspended in water. That is a gap in my memory that I've struggled to fill. So when I realized I was in water, it was mostly a physical sensation, just feeling myself immersed in liquid. I remember thinking that my shoes had come off. And then in very quick sequence of events, I heard my husband calling for me. I tried to get to him. And then, we were separated and I was swept downriver. And I think at that point, it almost became like a robotic thing. I was grabbing for branches and trying to breathe, and those things sort of happen without thinking about it. But yeah, it was a lot of chaos and fear, of course, but also sort of this a bit of calm, like understanding that the worst had happened and now I've got to figure something out.
Can't even imagine that. In Where the River Took Us, as it's called, there is an episode that features a Dallas attorney who's leaning on his faith after losing his parents and his 2 daughters in this tragedy. Now, you seem to find similarities and differences when it comes to religion and community playing a role in the aftermath of all of the flooding. Can you talk a little bit more about that and sort of kind of how that connection really helps, I guess, with some of the coping mechanisms?
Yeah, of course. RJ Harbor was introduced to me by another friend of mine, and we just started a conversation about what his experience was like, what my experience was like, just kind of relating to each other as survivors of this flood starting late last year. And something I noticed was that RJ was his source of strength was his religion and his faith. It was very impressive to me. And we just started talking about that, and I wanted to speak to him at length about that. I talked to him about my spiritual practices. I'm not a religious person, but I do put my faith in a higher power.
Sure.
I do recognize that I am not running the universe, and that I've got to deal with what comes my way. And that's something that I've learned to do in sobriety. Mm-hmm. So it's a totally different thing, but ultimately in our conversation, I think I found that the result is kind of the same. Like, I want to live my life in a way that's, as a good person would, being of service, telling my story, helping others tell their stories. And RJ is, because of his faith, is also leading a life of service and of devotion. And so, I just saw how ultimately we get there through different paths, but we, in the wake of the flood, are actually thinking about life and living life in a similar way.
Yeah, the last episode of the podcast, it's out now. So what are you hoping, Aaron, that listeners are going to take away from all of this ultimately?
Yeah, the last episode of the podcast, which came out today, features a conversation with my sister, Alyssa. I hope people hear how vulnerable she can be and how courageous it is for her to open up and talk about the most difficult moment of her life. I hope that people take from the podcast and understand the strength of my family, the strength of my loved ones, and the strength of our love for each other. But I think ultimately the goal of the project is to help people understand what happened, what life has been like in the aftermath. And I hope what they do with that understanding is show compassion, show grace, and have patience for the people who lost the most in this event.
And as we near the 1-year mark, it's coming up this weekend since all of this happened. What has stood out to you think, as you visited with people who are now trying to rebuild their lives throughout the entire Texas Hill Country? What do you think really sticks out?
I think the experience of rebuilding is different for everyone. And that's what I kind of take away from this. And for people who are rebuilding homes and a way of life out there, it's one thing. There are people who are rebuilding their sense of faith, or who may be rebuilding their sense of safety,
sure,
or maybe rebuilding a family life after losing a loved one or a child. So rebuilding just means something very different depending on what your experience was like out there. Even within my own family, we were all in the same house, but where we were in the house and who we were, who at that moment, has influenced how the aftermath of this flood has been. So rebuilding is extremely personal, and again, I just hope that folks who know people who are working on these things, understand that a little bit more because of this project.
Well, we want to give you our deepest thanks to Texas Monthly senior editor Aaron Presley. Aaron, thank you so much for this conversation. We really appreciate it. And thank you for everything that you're doing in the light of all of this tragedy here. Of course, you can listen to all 7 episodes of his podcast called Where the River Took Us. It's available for you right now on TexasMonthly.com.
Mommy, I'm so happy that you're home.
There are some people whose absence is just impossible to ignore. Even at just 8 years old, Hadley Hannah was one of them.
She just was always happy and loving and just really special, one-of-a-kind little girl.
Hadley was Carrie Hannah's middle child and also her mini-me. Hadley loved sports, she loved making people laugh, and most of all, she loved being a kid.
I'll always be a baby, even when I'm a teenager.
For anybody who didn't have the beautiful experience of knowing Hadley firsthand, can you describe who she was?
She was loud. Our house is really quiet now. She always made her presence known. And she was a great middle sister because she was Harper's best friend and Hunter's best friend. They still love each other so much.
Camp Mystic was part of that childhood, and it was also part of Carrie's childhood too. See, for generations, families have sent daughters to the camp along the Guadalupe River in Kerrville to build friendships and grow their faith. So for Carrie, dropping off her girls last July was a happy goodbye.
The last memory I have of her was her running away from me at camp drop-off and cartwheeling, throwing her hands in the air, and just being so happy. And I guess I'm glad that that is the last thing I saw.
5 days later, historic floodwaters tore through Camp Mystic before dawn, overwhelming cabins as campers slept. Hadley ended up being among the many girls reported missing.
I woke up to my phone just blowing up and asking if I had heard anything about flooding, about girls being found downriver in trees, and I didn't know anything.
Carrie's oldest daughter, Harper, barely survived, and Hadley still unaccounted for. But days later, her body was found.
So her nails were how we identified her, because she'd painted them alternating green and yellow before camp. Just told her how sorry I was and that I loved her and begged her to forgive me.
27 girls and counselors died that morning, now remembered as Heaven's 27, and 9 of them were from North Texas. Carrie says those other 9 grieving parents have now become a new family.
We wish we didn't know each other, because we wish none of us were in this position, but oh, thank goodness we're together.
Senate Select Committee on Disaster Preparedness and Flooding will come to order.
And as the families mourned, they also demanded answers, including the Hannahs, convincing lawmakers in Austin to make a change.
Our precious, hilarious, kind, caring, silly, loving little girl who always wanted to help others died because there was no plan, because there was no backup system or sirens.
Last September, Texas lawmakers passed multiple bills strengthening flood preparedness and warning systems in flood-prone areas.
I think that I have to have a purpose now. And that purpose is protecting my children, their future children, and all the other children that go to camp.
For Carrie, that's only part of Hadley's legacy. When Hadley wasn't cartwheeling through life, she was giving out hugs. And today, that spirit lives on through the nonprofit Hugs from Hadley.
Like, she would just come up and just get you from behind and give you a big hug, and oh, I'd give anything for a hug now. And Doug came up with Hugs from Hadley, and we are just looking for organizations that fit her spirit.
I mean, if she could see all the good that you're doing in her name, if she could see all the people who remember her, all the people who are inspired, what do you think she'd say?
She'd be happy. She'd say thank you.
And maybe give one of those sneak attack hugs,
She'd
right?
give a big hug.
1 year later, green ribbons still wrap trees throughout the park cities. Signs and crosses still decorate front yards. Quiet reminders that this community is forever missing 9 precious daughters. Carrie admits the grief will never disappear, but neither will these girls, and neither will Hadley.
We thought Hadley was destined for greatness, and she still is. It's just not how we expected it to be. And I hate that it took our 27 angels to change things, but they're making a difference.
Amelia McGalvro, CBS News, Texas.
You know, 10 times heaven touched the earth out here, and it's kind of a sacred ground.
Mike Richards' ranch was his dream. Love come true is the way he says it.
We'd have fishing tournaments with family and friends, and I mean, we spent a lot of time down here. And now, you know, I don't know if it'll ever be the same because we're not the same, you know.
We first met Mike last July. He lost his cabin on the Guadalupe when the river rose. But what he found will forever stay with him. Mike discovered the bodies of 10 people who died in the flood on his land. At the time, he told me he couldn't sleep till he knew every person on his land had been found.
I just want to lay my head down on my pillow as soon as I can and say that I don't think anymore of on my land, you know. And I owe that as a father, as a grandfather, as a neighbor.
Today, there are no more bodies left to bury, but those sleepless nights remain.
From July 4th to well, I guess today, I've watched the sun come up.
Those 10 souls still weigh heavy on his heart.
But I wasn't prepared for it. I don't know how any man could be prepared for that. I think it was just the broken heart, you know, is what it does to you. And man, I ain't had it broken like that before.
But there can still be beauty in a broken heart. This is one of the most peaceful spots on Mike's ranch. The Guadalupe slows to a babbling brook at the base of this tree, now a place of reflection.
A counselor from Camp Mystic was found at the base of that tree.
The volunteers that helped Mike retrieve her body marked it with a cross. One more reminder of what happened here.
Something special to be a little counselor up there, you know, and helping all those kids, and all she did was wanting to have fun that weekend.
But Mike is determined to not let this overwhelming sadness define him and his land he loves so much. He wants to reclaim it for himself and the 10 people who came to rest here, this sacred ground where heaven touched the earth 10 times.
I want to build a big pavilion where I can have barbecues and stuff like that. And those that want to come up here, that spent time out here with us searching, man, I want them to come up here and enjoy themselves and see what Guadalupe's like, you know, on good terms, you know, on our terms.
Because even after everything that's changed Mike and the Hill Country, he's choosing to move forward.
You can wake up every day and decide what kind of day it's going to be, and you know, you're going to have a good day, you're going to look at everything in the past and dwell on it, you know, and that don't do anybody any good. So I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other and see what happens.
Just like the river, life keeps moving. even after the storm. In Kerr County, Bo Evans, CBS News, Texas.
There is nothing like being a kid playing Little League Baseball, right? It's that time of the year. But on July 4th of last year, along with so much more, the Little League fields of the Hill Country were destroyed, the horrible floods. But with a little help from some Major League friends, baseball is back in the batter's box. Our Bo Evans was there for opening day.
Fresh cut grass, chalk on dirt, and the familiar sound of strikes being thrown. It's baseball season in Texas. Opening day, in fact.
Yeah, I could not go to sleep. I was like so excited. I was just like, I got up early, took a shower, did my hair. Yeah.
And with opening day comes fanfare.
But are y'all ready for some softball and baseball? Let's play ball!
But nothing about this March day was promised. Just 8 months prior, this beautiful ballpark was washed away.
We had our last game July 2nd, and we closed up shop and we're like, we'll come back, kind of clean up maybe this weekend, kind of go through stuff. And we all know that did not happen.
Our fields were gone.
Like almost everything else, the July 4th flooding destroyed the Little League fields in Ingram. Amy Barnes and Caroline Key are both Little League moms.
July 5th, when we walked around, we were stuck. We were devastated and sad and pretty bummed.
My daughter's a student at the Hunt School, and we lost 2 students as part of our school community. And in addition, we lost some of our friends too.
When we woke up in the morning, everything was wrecked. And we had like a pretty good view of where it happened. It was wrecked.
How were you feeling the next few weeks?
Sad.
Why were you sad?
Because they lost some friends.
I had 3 sets of little eyes looking up saying, where are we going to play next year? And we said we would figure it out.
Not playing ball was simply not an option.
I mean, after July 4th, we needed small wins, right?
And that meant getting a little help from some Major League friends.
You know, we came over to see what we could do to help, and it became immediate evident that the fields were wiped out. We came up over the hill, and there was really nothing left here. So we decided to, you know, right then I decided whatever we got to do to figure this out and get it done.
The Houston Astros, the Texas Rangers, the Community Foundation of Texas, and others donated nearly $3 million and rebuilt the field.
And the joy you feel today has been this pent-up joy this community has had for so long.
That joy was bursting at the seams. The kids couldn't wait for ceremonial ribbons to be cut. They just wanted to play.
Because of the people with the response of what we had during the flood, I didn't expect this, but I knew something would happen.
And with every pitch thrown and ball hit, these kids are getting something back that was ripped away from them.
If we can get a hot dog to a little kid, I mean, what else do you need besides baseball and hot dogs, right?
A chance just to be kids and play a little ball. In Ingram, Bo Evans, CBS News, Texas.